pedestrian crossing.
Really? One day I just woke up and I saw pedestrian crosswalks on the road. No one really showed me how to use them properly.
Well, this is how it's done. You never cross before doing these things. They might save your life. First, when you get to the crosswalk, you stop. You look left, you look right. If there's a vehicle coming, you put your hand out, making eye contact with the driver.
It's 2 minutes gone past the hour of 9 o'clock in the morning time. Good morning to you, Grenada, Carriacou, PD, Martinique, the rest of the Eastern Caribbean, to you wherever you are. It's a wonderful Tuesday morning. It's the 14th day of the month of June. And indeed, I say thank you for being part of the Classic family. We're getting ready for To The Point, and this Tuesday, and as is expected, we have representatives from the National Democratic Congress in studio. Well, with me this morning, one in studio, and joining me live in studio is the NDC's candidate for St. George Northeast, Jonathan LaCrette, and Northwest. And joining me via Zoom, David Andrew, the NDC's candidate for St. Andrews Southeast. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the program. How are you?
Good morning, Joseph. Thank you very much for having me, and good morning to all our listeners, both locally and those following your streams, whichever part of the world. I am doing great. I'm doing fine. I have life. The important things are good. I have health and well-being and peace of mind, and I'm in a great place. Thank you.
Comrade LaCrette, what's happening with you?
Good morning, Joseph, and good morning to your listeners, both locally and in the diaspora. I am doing well, thank you, and I trust the same for you.
Well, the last time I was not doing well, I was at preschool. So that was not yesterday. I'm always well. But I'm always well. I think I made it a matter of principle that I'm well, because I'm not. How I am is not dictated necessarily by how I feel and what's happening around me. I accept my circumstances and I take myself to the next level. And when I tell you that it is well, JC means it is well. Well, it's not perfect, but it is well.
But it is well.
It is well. And certainly want to say welcome to our viewers, those of you that's joining us via GBN Channel 7, Channel 11, or Channel 20. Even those of you chiming in via Facebook or YouTube or via the World Wide Web at www.gbn.gd. Gentlemen, we're on the home stretch. It is now or never. There's no turning back. There's no if, maybe, perhaps. There's no opportunity to say that I can't or don't want to do this. I want to start with you, David. Tell me, what's happening on the ground?
Well, we are doing very well. We are getting extremely encouraging feedback on the ground. I'm not trying to count chickens before they're actually hatched, but I can report to you there has been such a refreshing reception to our messaging. There has been such an overwhelming creation of hope among our young people. Many of them have been coming to me and expressing the fact that they feel a sense of hope. They feel that there is something they can look forward to, and they are willing to come behind us. They are willing to support us. They've had one or two concerns, and in some cases perpetuated from other sides. But we have been able to address those meaningfully. But we've been getting extremely good responses from the young people. We've been getting extremely good responses from many conscious and most conscious and patriotic Grenadians. And so I am highly encouraged in terms of what's happening. We continue to do our work. We continue to get into the communities. We continue to meet with our constituents and build relationships and build connections so that we are able to more adequately represent our constituents, articulating their concerns and being able to advocate for the issues that are of importance to them. So I'm quite comfortable with what's been happening on the ground and how we've been able to make immense strides from the time we started.
LaCrette, what's happening up northwest? Exciting times. Should I ask?
Very exciting times. Well, in actuality, I am having the time of my life, really campaigning and canvassing the ground. To be quite honest with you, my people and I in St. George Northwest, we have always had an excellent relationship. I mean, when you build a 20-year relationship with people, it's not a relationship that can be easily broken or easily destroyed. So the connection has been there from day one. I have not been shown a bad face, even by the individuals who are supporters on the other side, because most often than not, I may have taught a child a word of theirs. So I am enjoying the political period and season that I am in at this particular point in time. As my colleague David said, it's just really a refreshing experience to be on the ground at this particular point in time. I believe that the visibility of the candidate in the political field, on the ground, in the communities, interacting and engaging with the constituents, that is what I believe has spurred the refreshing that my dear colleague David is talking about. And you're seeing such a stark interest in individuals wanting to discuss and to debate issues and also to give suggestions as to what they think can be once elected into office.
You say there's a refresh day, there's this new wind, a change. What exactly are people gravitating towards?
I believe, well, for me, David one might be different, but for me, the visibility of the candidate, I think it's a common thread as it relates to constituents not seeing the candidate for a very long time, and I'm speaking about current administration, and now you have an NDC government wanting to come into the governance of the country, and their candidates are on the ground, and being interactive and being sociable, sitting and actually listening to the concerns of the people. I think there's a spark in people's eyes. You're seeing the light in their eyes. You're seeing interest in having that conversational dialogue with them. That is what is causing the refreshing. And it is a wind of change in that regard, because by and large, you really do see candidates just on the heels of election and on the heels of another election after a 4-year period. And as a National Democratic Congress, we intend to change the status quo of that as we move forward.
Dave, is that the similar sentiments in terms of what you're feeling on the ground?
Yes, we have to add, to piggyback a little bit on what Jonathan has said about the visibility and the contact with constituents. In many of our pocket engagements, we have the distinct approach of entertaining questions and comments. And we've done that at all. In fact, our political leader too entertains those at his own town hall meetings when he delivers his Wednesday sessions. And we have done that in all of our pocket meetings. And that has been so refreshing. In fact, one person came to me and pointed out that amongst the other side, they were told, if you have a question, come to the constituency office. We will answer it there. And they found that to be very offensive, contrasting to the approach that we've had. In all of our meetings, we've allowed persons from whichever side to be able to present, to be able to ask a question, to be able to confront, challenge an idea. And I think that is a very, very refreshing element to the local politics that includes our people, that includes our constituents and make them become part of the process. And we are definitely intent on continuing that as part of the way forward. I was particularly pleased when our political leader articulated that in light of that, he is even going to make it law that representatives must go back, be it once a quarter or once every 4 months, to the constituents to find out how am I doing, to get an assessment. And I think that's an excellent idea to ensure that by law we are mandated to go back to our people, back to the people who have employed us. And so what we are starting is just setting the foundation for that kind of engagement. Additionally, I think one of the things that people have been gravitating towards is the hope that is now being brought by the messaging and the programmatic platform of the National Democratic Congress. Now, I've been speaking with, for instance, I'll give you one example. I spoke with a young man from Grenville a couple of days ago, and he's saying to me, listen, sir, I am 32 years old, and I have been in the Imani program for the last 12 years. Those were his words to me. And he says, at this point, I feel a sense as if I wouldn't ever be able to own a piece of land. I won't ever be able to have a house. I won't ever be able to make it. So I'm looking for the next opportunity to leave the country. Those were his words to me. And I had to reassure him, we are bent on augmenting what's there. We are bent on making better the things that exist and creating more opportunities and hopeful opportunities. So a lot of persons, when they hear of the ideas for youth and the ICT and the robotics and the coding and all of the other skills training focus, and they hear of the other visionary ideas that the National Democratic Congress presents, they feel a sense of hope and they want to dream again. They want to be able to say, yes, maybe I could, maybe I should. There is something worth staying here for. And we've been getting that sense quite a lot. So I want to add that to what Jonathan has said.
Wanting to dream, wanting to hope, maybe, yes, there is something in this for me. Your constituents, you're on the ground, you're lobbying with them. They talk about that refreshing wind of change that seem to be engaging them. But what are some of the greater issues that the Northwest have been plagued with?
Right. As I traverse the communities, one of the major issues is the community centers for constituents. The mere fact that they are closed, some of them are being utilized but not by the community itself for meaningful and engaging and substantial activities and programs that can build the community in that kind of sustainable way. Housing is an issue for young adults within the constituencies, within the communities, as well as there are some young people who want to get into farming, but they don't have the land to do so that they can, they don't have the land to do so. I know one of the things that we are definitely going to do as a NDC government is ensure that government land is provided to these individuals so that they can eat from the production of the land. One of the other things that was really striking to me is that as it relates to human and social development, the protection of women as it relates to abuse, what stringent laws are going to be put in place to protect women from men that are violent, etc., and women that are left with children 2, 3, 4, 5,
is
6
it men or is it animals that are violent? And I said that with no apology. Because I don't ever associate myself with a male specimen that would look to hit a woman and in any way violate her. So I say those on team animals.
From a number of women, they asked and they were concerned about what laws or policies we are going to enact or put in place, to safeguard them from that level of domestic abuse.
Well, while you're at it, and I think it's an excellent point you make, but very often you agree with me that the challenge is not necessarily the establishment of the legislations, but the enforcement has always seemed to be
the enforcement,
challenge.
yes. Well, we've always had a problem. I think from day one when my first interview with you occurred, I did say that we have a major problem in Grenada as it relates to implementation of those policies and implementation of those laws, and as you correctly stated, the enforcement of them as well. So we have to ensure that as an NDC government, once the laws are enacted, that they are enforced and that individuals recognize that if you do the crime or if you breach the law, you are definitely going to pay the consequences for your actions.
But let me ask you, David, as you hear, because I think one of the drawbacks to addressing what I refer to as a scourge in society, the violence against women, is that it's become ingrained, systematic, and very often it is not perpetrated by a 16-year-old or a 13-year-old. Very often it is perpetrated by some of our leaders in society, which makes it even more difficult, at times not impossible, but difficult to rid ourselves of it.
Yes, Joseph, and that is in fact one of the bigger challenges we have as it relates to dealing with the scourge of domestic violence and violence against women. I think we've become desensitized to it in many ways, and although we have groupings, you have national groupings that have been advocating and making sure there are awareness campaigns, and we support those. But I think in many ways we have normalized violence against women. We have even made it become part of some of our religious rhetoric, and sadly so, because I am a God-fearing person and I don't see that as part of anything scriptural or anything Christian. But I think it's an issue for me of the lack of demonstration of the value that we want to see. So when we treat our women folk with scant courtesy, even those of us who consider ourselves as leaders and as successful citizens, when we treat our women folk with scant courtesy, the average other person looks on and sees that that disdain that our women folk are treated with, and they translate that, their own interpretation of it is that I can hit them, I can do them as I want, they're my property. And that is a very sad state of affairs. And so apart from the legislation, which obviously Jonathan has spoken about, which we must toughen up on, is the issue of modeling the behaviors we want to see, is the issue of teaching those values and practicing them. So we're teaching them in schools, we're teaching them from way down, because these are behavior changes we want to inculcate. These are behavior changes we want to see. And they cannot happen divorced from what we practice and what we demonstrate across our nation. And I'm talking from right up to the top, right down to the kindergartner. And so that's something we need to do, the values and the demonstration of those principles that we want to see displayed by our constituents and our citizenry.
It sounds all good, Jonathan, but those would argue that we're living in a period of social, moral, and spiritual decadence, that we're on a downward slippery slope. So why do you paint a good picture that what's happening, there's no turning back, just let it be? What say you?
Joseph, just as how when we get into government on the 23rd of June, collective responsibility will become the modus operandi of the government of the day on June 23rd, and that will be the National Democratic Congress. Collective responsibility must also be the modus operandi of the citizenship of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. We must become responsible for our actions. And even though you have some semblance of societal and moral decadence taking place, which is true, and it is quickly eroding for that matter, I believe that as a government and as individual citizens, we have a responsibility to ensure that the values that we preach and teach, that we live by them and that we uphold them.
Yes, Dave?
I quickly want to add, if we do not take the approach where we do exactly what Jonathan said, we might just as well close down everything else and say, well, some persons are not interested in education, so let's close schools. And some persons are not interested in saving the persons with mentally challenged circumstances, so let's just close all mental facilities. So we can't take that approach. I believe we need to occupy meaningfully. We need to engage fully to ensure we have the best quality of life. As long as we have the opportunity, we can't just throw our hands up and say, well, it's getting worse anyway. Sometimes I hear people say, well, in the last days, it's going to be chaotic. And they are quoting scriptures in some cases. But the truth is, I think even God expects us to occupy meaningfully till he comes. So I want to sound the alarm as a nation that we cannot stand idly by and just see things collapse without engaging fully and trying to turn things around. Otherwise, we might just drop all tools and forget nationhood, nation building going forward, education, health. We might forget everything else. And that's not what we want to do.
Adding to that, I just want to piggyback on what David said. For decades, we have been saying as Grenadians that Grenada is a Christian nation.
Are we?
Yeah. So it's time for us to put our money where our mouth is and really begin to...
Is that actually the truth, or is that just an expression of some figment of our imagination?
I wouldn't go into that this morning because we're going to get all doctrinal and theological and ecclesiastical.
But I'm asking honestly.
Well, I'm going to respond after David.
I could save you that. So, because you see, I'm not a man of the cloth like LaCrette is, so I could save him that answer to avoid him getting all theological and all of that. So I won't get so deep. But I could simply say we paid lip service to this idea of being a Christian society. We treat each other with disdain and scorn. We disregard each other. Even in our own political campaign, you look at that and you ask, where is the Christianity in the way campaign and political activities take place. In some cases, as one preacher was saying, people tend to rest that aside, it seems, to take care of political campaigning matters. But in a wider sense, people talk the idea of being Christian because they say, I'm not a beast. What am I? If I'm not a beast, I'm a Christian. And I think that's just doing lip service to the whole idea of being a Christian, when in fact, it should really talk about following a certain core set of values that are Christocentric, right? It's centered around Christian and teachings and principles and values. And regardless to where you are, regardless to what you do, regardless to whose company you're in, those values must be kept. And when we do that more consistently, we can then truly call ourselves a more Christian society.
Whether we choose to hold on to the theme of Christian society or not, you would argue that is that deviation from some of those traditional core values that has left us with that hollow and that torn moral and social fabric that has come to pervade us and have given rise to some of the issues we have with our young people, even the same violence against women, against our boys and our girls.
That is why the Congress is seeking to ensure that humanity returns to politics and that a value for people returns to politics. From a personal perspective, I believe that if you're going to have anything spread throughout a community, a constituency, a nation, it must be modeled at the top. And that is why my colleague David said a while ago that if you want particular values to be pervaded throughout a community or a nation, you must ensure that you model it first. So as politicians, we have to ensure that we abide by the rule of law first and foremost, that we portray and display the kind and type of values that we want our young people, our middle age and our elderly to also portray throughout society. Mind you, Joseph, you're not going to get everybody on board because there's some individuals who hold fast to their philosophy, of who they are,
and that's what makes us human beings.
Yes, and that's what makes us human beings and our differences, So you're not going to get everybody, but you'll definitely get the majority of individuals beginning to think about how they live, why they exist, what is your value, And when you begin to stir that kind of thinking pattern and thinking process in people's minds, you tend to have a change of behavior. So there is some work to be done, and we are up for the challenge for the work to be done.
Paradigm shift, I would say, David. That's what's required.
Tectonic, I would use.
Certainly, and I agree with both terms.
That one throw you off guard, right?
I really just...
That one throw you off guard.
I didn't see it coming.
Tectonic is quite right.
During the words that we this morning.
Tectonic.
25 minutes gone past the hour in the morning time. It is to the point. I want to say a special good morning to those of you that's on social media or Facebook family. Thank you for being part of the conversation. We take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we open up the lines to engage you. You can also join us via the WhatsApp portal 435. I see there's some postings that's already there. I will attend to them shortly. So take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back right here on Classic GBN Television and Radio on To The Point. They are the few, the strong, the elite. Grenada, get ready as our sporting gladiators go for gold and glory at the World Championships. Follow every throw, stride and jump from July 15th to the 24th. Capture the action daily on GBN Television. It's the World Championships. The dream continues.
James is going to win it.
COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time. It is spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby. These droplets are too heavy to travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on surfaces is not yet known. So it is wise to clean surfaces regularly, particularly in the vicinity of people infected with COVID-19. Hands touch many surfaces, which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surface to yourself. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with the bend of your elbow or use a disposable tissue. If a tissue is used, discard it immediately into a closed bin. The most effective way to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus is to clean your hands frequently with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. This will eliminate the virus if it is on your hands. Stay healthy and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Thank you. Welcome back to the program. 28 minutes gone past the hour, and a special thanks to my guests this morning, Jonathan LaCrette, the NDC's candidate for St. George's Northwest, and David Andrewson, and the NDC's candidate for St. George Andrew Southeast. Gentlemen, thank you. Welcome back to the program. Question coming straight off of WhatsApp is your plans for education and that of primary health care. We're not sure. I've actually heard on the platform where some, while we haven't gone to voting yet, where some individuals have been told what their portfolio would be for the next. I'm not sure if you all have done that within the NDC. So if you've been told beforehand what your portfolios would be, but let's assume, but certainly I'm assuming the NDC has a principal position on the issues as it relates to health care and primary continuing education, and I think both of you are well placed and qualified to have that conversation. Yes, we don't want to talk about what portfolio you held at prior times. I don't want to get into that, but I know you're both qualified to speak on the issue of education. What has gone wrong, starting with you, David? What has gone wrong with our education system?
Well, I think several things have affected, allow me to say, I wouldn't want to say what has gone wrong, but several things have affected the efficiency of our education sector, ranging from the resourcing that we give to some key and strategic areas, ranging to policy positions on issues like skills and where we place them and the tracks that are available for them, ranging to what we do at our tertiary level institutions, how NULO and TAMCC and all of those institutions fit. So allow me to say one of the key areas of shortfall is our system has not appropriately focused the area of skills, our education system. I know we've made a lot of talk about it. We've said things about skills education, but if you listen carefully, there's an underlying narrative that says these persons are not academically fit, so we put them through the skills track. Now, I have a problem with that, fundamentally, because skills education, technical education, is by no means something inferior to any other form of education on the regular academic mainstream. But I think that has been an area of drawback. For instance, we've tried to outfit a number of schools with CVQ, Caribbean Vocational Qualification apparatus, to ensure that a number of the students could get the kind of can-do competency-based skills that are required to meet skills requirement across what the market standards require. But that, as you realize, has fallen through terribly for most of the schools. One, it's costly, and we know that. Two, it hasn't been well resourced. And we need to rethink, where exactly are we supposed to do this? How exactly are we supposed to do this? And at what position in schools are we supposed to put it in? Is it best put back in at the primary level? Some people advocate for that. Is it best put back in to begin to take your stream at third form level? Is it best developed after you leave secondary school, which seems to be the major thrust these days, although we have some of it in secondary schools? But an NDC administration will revisit that and ensure that we have skills training from wherever it's appropriately positioned at the secondary level into a stream that can take you all up to polytechnic, university type qualification. so that you have real can-do skills in a technical area right to the most proficient level. We have the NTA, we have these agencies that we can collaborate with to ensure that we have market standards that are relevant to what's required. And in fact, a lot of times some people come from with skills, and sometimes they're still not up to the level where the industry standards can be met. So I have a problem with the fact that at this point, when we think of constructing a Sandals or a Silver Sands, we still have to import quite a lot of the higher end technical skills that are required for such constructions. To me, that's a flaw in our education system and the way we have prepared our children and our young people to embrace those opportunities. Then there are several, so apart from schools, there's the issue of community education, community skills education, because we have a lot of persons in our communities who have learned skills, but they have no certification, and we want to make sure they have those. So that needs to be addressed. And there are some key areas of skills. I keep talking about it because some of these areas have not been looked at, but they have highly lucrative areas of skills. For instance, the underwater welding and diving. It's an industry that can be easily piggybacked on the yachting industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry in Grenada. We have all the marinas, and I don't think enough has been done to get enough young persons and enough Grenadians trained in the skills required there. And those are real well-paying job opportunities that exist.
Okay.
And our education system needs to provide facilities there to train people. So I focus on skills a bit.
Right.
But then there are other areas. You talk about the...
And just hold for me, David, because I have a caller that I have waiting. Good morning, caller. You alive?
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning to you. I'm fine, thank you.
Good morning to Mr. LaCrette. Good morning. Good morning to Mr. Andrews. Listen, I am really happy this morning. I actually, from yesterday, I started to be happy. From the time the election was called, I was fearful. I had a fear in me from the time the election was called. My friends and them were saying to me, girl, you're a woman of prayer. Why you have this fear? I was terrified. And I was terrified because of the electoral office. That's where my fear was. I didn't trust. I didn't trust them there. I thought a lot of things was happening there, and my fear was there. But yesterday midday, the fear just went, and the fear went, and what came into my spirit is just victory and joy. And I'm saying, I'm taking a page from LaCrette, that I am testifying today that definitely the NDC will win the election. No two ways about that. I thank God for you all guys, and I thank God for Grenada that a new day is really on the horizon, and the young people and I, not a young person anymore, but I'm looking forward to a brighter light and a brighter day in Grenada. God bless you all guys.
Thank you, caller. We're keeping our eyes on the clock. LaCrette?
I want to piggyback on David's comment a bit. He did have a very interesting perspective on the skills and also the technical side of education. I've worked in the system for about 21 years. And fundamentally at our core, as it relates to education and every other sector, Joseph, is our inability to lead effectively. And we have a fundamental problem with leadership in Grenada. I do not believe, you see, and that is the reason why at this particular juncture, you have the candidates that currently represent the National Democratic Congress political party, from our political leader to all the other 14 candidates. The style of engagement, the style of social interaction, the style of leadership, the style of grace that we bring to the political arena, that is what is causing the wind of change, because it's different. And I said before that we have been accustomed to a particular political culture for almost 3 decades. That is not easy to erase. So anything that seems as though it is diverging from what is the norm, people will take some time before they actually gravitate towards it. And I make that point because our sectors have been led in a particular way for a very long time. They have been managed in a particular way for a very long time. They have been under a particular level of administration for a particular period of time. So bringing this new wave of leadership, this new wave of administration, this new wave of management is definitely going to cause a surge of concern, a surge of questions, etc., and challenges in people's mind. But I believe that has been slowly erased over the past couple weeks and months or so. But fundamentally in education, we lack the leadership and we lack the ability to also continue what was built and the implementation again. I've always held very dear to the fact that we love to pay consultants, and they come in and we pay them thousands of dollars, and the document that was prepared as it relates to recommendation as to how we should move forward with a particular unit or with the sector on a whole, it stays on the table.
Do you get a sense that that failure of leadership has given rise to that spirit of mediocrity that a lot of our young people, and not even some of the adults, we've gotten so used to it that we figure that should be the order of the day, and we can't see beyond the veil?
Yeah. Well, I am a firm believer of the fact that what starts at the top diffuses or filters down to the bottom. And whenever you have individuals who sit at the law of the lid and they control the narrative and the status quo of how a society should function, if they go left, society goes left. If they go right, society goes right. But if they stay on the straight and narrow, abide by the law, have valued principles, etc., most often than not, you find that individuals sort of mirror what comes from the top.
Here, the Chinese have a saying that the fish, in fact, rots from the head. Yeah. And very often people think it's not just in the political arena, but I think in all spheres of life, if you have a family that is dysfunctional at the top, 9 out of 10, unless somebody gets to a point of reckoning where they recognize, you know what, this has to change, then nothing happens. A question coming from off of social media, and I'm going to throw it first at you, David. In terms of your expectations, if elected, your first 100 days, it is always set, not just here at home, universally, it's set as a benchmark. And so what can we expect?
Even in the US.
Your first 100 days, you have to make an impression. What's on your timetable? What can we expect to be the priority areas for you in St. Andrew?
That's a question that I'd probably rather reflect on a little bit more to give you an answer. I don't commit myself overly before it's due, but I can tell you of urgency would be to, one, continue connecting with constituents, because there you get specific, after you get a mandate, you need specific guidance from them. I don't want to see myself divorcing from the process with them. I want to always be in connection with them. And so within that 100 days, to go back to them again and confirm with them the things that we believe can become the immediate priorities. Rather than saying, I'm coming to do this, and that's been always one of my approaches. Rather than saying, I'm coming to do this, I'm saying, I've heard you, because there are several things that they have pointed out that on our walks, we've pointed out a number of things, but which ones of them become the priority, I can't say just yet, because there are several other variables that would have to be looked at in terms of feasibility, cost, time frame, and so connecting with them and pinning down and fine-tuning, this is the one, whether it's a Sagassum, whether it's a bridge, whether it's that, whether it's, so in terms of my constituents, but certainly focusing people and getting people involved in shaping the next steps.
What tectonic movements can we expect?
I want to behave this morning
in the Northwest.
Well, I have been talking a lot about forming councils for human and social development. By and large, you do know whenever you get into government, people have the perception that ministers or senators are extremely busy, and as a result, that's one of the reasons why they don't have time to get back on the ground, etc. I want to respect the vote of my constituents. I want to respect the confidence that they are about to place in me on June 23rd. And as a result of that, I don't ever want to be too busy that I can't go back on the ground. So I definitely agree with my colleague David that connection is going to be one of the things that will be on my list or my agenda, one of my top priorities, because I believe that when you form these councils for human and social development, that the people choose the individuals who they want to represent them at the community level on these councils, and these volunteers ensure that the programs and projects that come from the people as it relates to ideas and decision-making processes, that these projects and programs are executed together with the Member of Parliament for the constituency. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to also create a high level of engagement, a high level of social interaction amongst both green and yellow. Joseph, did you hear me? A high level of social interaction and engagement amongst both green and yellow. Because if we are to do this thing, and I've been saying in my pocket meetings, we cannot continue to allow the line of color to divide us. Right. If there's a project taking place in the community for the development of all who lives in the community, we must be able to have green and yellow work together because we both live in the community. And if we're going to benefit from what is taking place in the community, that partnership of hope must exist in a very glaring way. And I'm serious about that. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to having individuals on both sides collaborate on construction projects, education projects, as we build the community together. The time has come.
The time has come, and there's a caller on the line. Good morning, caller. You are live. Yes, go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I want to say good morning to you, I guess.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, I guess.
Yes, good morning, sir.
I want to congratulate them this morning. Hello?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say congratulations to your guests. I think they're doing a wonderful job. Yeah, they are doing a wonderful job. When you listen to the government, I think you have to wonder what is going on in Grenada. Because they have been treating the workers of this country so badly. And I have several things to talk about, but let me weigh in on the pension matter. Workers have been struggling for pension since 2018. Went to strike. The money was docked. And, the same pension matter, the government lose the matter in court. And to me, the leadership of the LMP have that thing as a joke. Yeah, but as a joke. Remember, when the salary was docked in 2018 or 2 years ago or something like that, workers of this country suffered. That is the most terrible, no, not terrible, what word could I use? Miserable Christmas workers of this country ever had. Some people went up with a negative sum of money. And I heard the Prime Minister talk about love for people now, one of his legacy. But if that's his legacy, I don't understand. Okay. Legacy, that is his legacy, love for people. And he have that thing as I mean, yeah, he have that thing as well. Nothing wrong in doing this. Remember, the same public workers and teachers, they have mother, they have father, they have children, grandchildren. How come the Prime Minister could expect this same people to come and vote for him this election? That man, I mean, is not a man of thinking. He's not a man of thinking, and I think I mean, people deserve to let him know that the people to let him know the same 15 city win. Yeah, the same 15 city won last election. You're going to get it this election. People are thinking.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
435-2041, that's the number that is on the inside. On the issue of skills training, the automotive industry, someone is saying, is one of the biggest ones, and it is a growing industry. But yet we look at our platforms for education, and it seems to be outdated in terms of being able to keep up with the requirements for the industry. Lako?
If I'm not mistaken, right now at the secondary level, only Boca Secondary School offers auto mechanics. In fact, I did it in Form 3 with Mr. Louison, and I'll never forget, it's where I seemingly learned to drive. Is where I learned what a piston is, a camshaft, a crankshaft, etc. Spark plugs. So you get that kind of orientation to auto mechanics that really gives you a very good start in life if that is your niche. Yeah. But in terms of allowing it to become something that is of a national educational drive or policy, I think that is something that definitely that the NDC is going to explore, because there are a lot of students at the secondary level, even at the primary level, you see them having a knack, not just for hands-on, but for auto mechanics in general. In fact, over my years of teaching at Happy Hill Secondary School, a number of students would have requested, so are you guys going to implement auto mechanics? We have electronics, we have industrial arts and woods, we have all these other technical areas, but auto mechanics is missing because this is what they are interested in. And that is why it goes back to my point prior. The visionary leadership that is needed for what must be on our curriculum as a 21st century education system and as a 21st century education sector, so that we can meet the needs and the demands of the current market. And that is an excellent and valid point to auto mechanics. Yeah.
Do you get the sense, David, that one of the challenges facing the education system is we provide information, but we do not make the connectivity between them? So, for example, if you introduce a child to auto mechanics quite early, all of a sudden, physics comes. There's a spark in physics that comes that comes alive.
Mathematics.
I had a case where a neighbor's child, he says to me, Mr. Cadore, I do not understand. I don't like math. I don't like physics. All because he could not appreciate what is it. Physics is all around us. Yeah. And you get the sense, when I was at Palmer, I'm an old Palmer boy. I did woodwork and all of those things. God knows, I didn't know how to hold a mallet at all. I probably still don't. But I was exposed to it and I have an appreciation for it. Yeah. Do you get the sense that conversation as to all-round education must not just be at the secondary level, but as early as possible, we introduce our children to an array of options and allow them to choose, David, as they advance up the age ladder?
Well, I think there are several schools of thoughts on that, and personally, I am careful about how crowded I make the curriculum for persons in the early stages of life, because I believe if persons are fitted with the appropriate skills earliest, the literacy skills, for instance, the numeracy skills, then they already have the foundation to branch off into any other as freely as they want. Now, sometimes some people want to shortchange that process and they want to introduce everything at the same time. For me, I think that could be pretty distracting, and it compromises the fundamental skills that need to be had for appropriate advancement going forward.
But you would agree, David, that the earlier you introduce those concepts to them, because we teach children math and language from the early age. Mm-hmm. When they get to advanced level,
they hate math.
And they hate English either way. So what is wrong with giving them a secondary option that maybe you're not good at math and English, but maybe I can do physics, I can do art, I can do something else that allows me that you can draw, because it doesn't matter which of the other areas you take. Math and English is going to become compulsory anyway. So why not introduce them quite early?
Joseph, I agree with you, but what I think needs to happen more strategically is inclusive education, inclusive teaching, such that the math, the technical education, all of these things come in while you do those core areas, because nothing is wrong that you're introducing them to auto mechanics in a story in a math class. And so contextually, you introduce them to elements of content as you explore that particular text. You take that same thing and you can do shapes in the engine of that, and so you do the math there too. So you're getting them to get exposed to all of those areas without unnecessarily burdening the curriculum too much, because I think that could be a challenge when you spread it far too thin and there's not enough depth to allow them to be able to meaningfully advance in any other area. But I do appreciate the need for exposure, and I think that would be more strategically achieved through inclusive teaching.
Indeed. We're keeping our eyes on the clock. It is 8 minutes until the hour in the morning time, until the hour of 10 o'clock. You know, that went on, right?
Yeah.
We have a caller on the line. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just want to concur with Mr. LaCrette, because before he said, I was thinking about that in terms of leadership, but I want to go further. I want to talk about the lack of leadership and proper governance, because Mr. LaCrette would have an experience which was improper understanding of governance. There was a time when he disciplined some children after a game. They were excited. They did something wrong. He disciplined them. The teachers agreed with him, and so on. But then the parents sent the children to the leader of the constituency representative, and then Mr. LaCrette will explain what happened. But it was not a case a good governance in that case. It was a misapplication of the rule of law, or even governance, because the discipline that Mr. LaCrette deployed was overridden or denounced or undervalued. And that's one of the reasons why we had the decadence in society. Also, in terms of skills, I heard you folks are speaking about skills. We talk about a lot of skills, technical and other, but there's a certain skill we need more. And maybe if the gentleman that intervened in Mr. LaCrette's situation had that kind of skill, maybe he would not have done that. And that is what is called soft skills, emotional intelligence, and all that goes with it. So we need more of that, because then there was a situation in Parliament, and I hope none of these people who speak end up in that. When the Speaker, Mr. Maguire, ordered the leader of the opposition to go out because he wouldn't take back a statement. What he did when he was being taken out of the Parliament, they're paying you to do that. Yes, you must do that because they're paying you. That is not the sign of somebody who's mature. The authority in the Parliament at the time was Mr. Maguire, the Speaker of the House, not the one who was even then leader of the opposition. Finally, I would say in strengthening Mr. LaCrette's position about leadership is that we haven't had a real education minister for a long while, since Ms. Alexis, since Ms. Tanka. I mean, that was one of the few hope beam of light we had. We need people who were able to have vision, who were able to steer, manage, and direct people in a way that is timely and so on. Not what we've been having lately. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, caller.
I'd like to respond briefly, please. Regarding the disciplinary issue, I'm not going to go into length about what happened. As a member of Parliament sitting over a constituency, you have particular jurisdictions and you have particular parameters within which you work as an MP. If the Ministry of Education, the governing body for education in any country, gives you as an individual the opportunity to lead, administrate, and manage a secondary institution, I don't expect executive overreach, because my boss is the Chief Education Officer. Right. So I don't expect no MP for any constituency to try and coerce a leader of a school or try and strong-arm them. And in cases where that happens, what you have happened is that you weaken the power of the principal in the eyes of his or her staff, in the eyes of the community, and in the eyes of the children. So there needs to be that division of power between what you do as an MP and what I do from my boss's perspective. And that's all I'll say for now.
Isn't that the same? Someone probably liken it to the same challenge you have, where there's not that gray line between party and the state.
Yeah.
So there's that culture of overreaching.
Yeah. And that's need to be gotten rid of.
Yep.
Yes.
Dave?
Yep, I certainly agree with LaCrette's comments, but I would probably want to add to this other part of the caller's comment when he spoke about his soft skills. I mean, when we started talking about skills, I was going to go into that part, because if nothing else for me, I certainly am an advocate for those skills, because we call them soft skills, but in fact they are hard skills. They are life skills, skills that even if you have as much education as you, academic education as you think desirable, and you don't have those, you still won't be able to make it in life the way you deserve to make it, or you can make it. And so the soft skills, I think we've overlooked that. We've not resourced those areas well enough. We've taken it for granted. We don't have it in many of our primary schools. We don't have it in numbers of our secondary schools. And so significant attention must be given to that to absorb the shock from some of the dysfunctions that we have. You've alluded to growing dysfunctions in some areas, but one of our responses has to be skills education, soft skills, life skills that allow people to learn, how do I cope? How do I manage with stressful situations? How do I deal with conflict without pulling a knife, without ending somebody, without chopping somebody? And these kinds of situations, how do I communicate when the conversations are difficult? All those are skills that we need in life, and that must be brought to the fore through life skills, and education must lead the charge.
And you would agree, LaCrette, that COVID has exacerbated those challenges there. Yeah. Our ability to cope, it was always there. I mean, and we growing up, you went on your run, you kickball, you go, you do all sort of things. But we have a growing generation who've gotten hooked to devices. And nothing is wrong with the devices.
Nothing is wrong with the devices.
But certainly, that interpersonal connection that allows us to say, I'm sorry, please forgive me. When that is substituted for the device, the question of our coping skills, it comes into question.
And that is a part of the conversation that we're having on the ground with our constituents at this particular point in time. I remember growing up as a young boy, and I mean, our community used to be littered with a number of sporting activities. And I was saying to a few of them the other day, on a Friday evening or a Saturday or a Sunday evening, some pasture in Northwest had some kind of football game that was taking place, some netball game that was taking place, some cricket game that was taking place. You know, Brizan against Fountainoy, you know, Grand Mall against Happy Hill. And people are calling again for that kind of cultural and sporting, for these kind of cultural and sporting activities to come back to the community, because it builds camaraderie, it builds relationship, it builds connectivity, and that's one of the things I believe that will definitely bring back the constituency to a community level. Yeah, so I'm really excited about my candidacy and representing my lovely people of St. George Northwest. I'm sure David is also for St. Andrew.
Absolutely.
Folks, we are on the home stretch. Unfortunately, we have to surrender the conversation.
Can we have an extra half an hour?
And that's what you call executive overreach.
Yeah. That's a good one, yeah.
I gave you 5 minutes, you want half an hour. Folks, we leave the conversation here for now. My two guests, it's always a pleasure having you guys on, David and Jonathan. Oh, it was a pleasure. The countdown is on. Today is the 14th.
Yeah.
Time will tell. I think the conversation that needs to be a bigger conversation, that wherever whatever transpires on the 23rd, we have to wake up the following day and appreciate the fact that we all have to play our part in economic development.
Yes.
It's a continuous process, and the issue of the partisan politics, it has to change. It's no longer about green, yellow, pink, blue, but it's each putting their hand to the wheel and asking themselves, not what my country can do for me, but what can I do for my country. Until then, GC loves you. Have yourself a really great one. The man GT comes in to take you forward until 12 o'clock. Until then, so long. Have a great one, Grenada. Bye-bye.